God chose me to be a preacher. Y'all think I want to be a preacher? You think I want to? I don't get paid from preaching. Y'all think I want to? No, I have to follow my calling. Because let me tell y'all something of who Bishop Whitehead is, right? Let me tell you who Bishop Whitehead is. Bishop Whitehead is going to say it like he want to say it, and I'm going to tell it like it is, because I ain't scared of none of y'all.
He dresses in designer suits, drives a Rolls Royce, and preaches regularly to his 1.5 million Instagram followers while referring to himself in third person. But he's not a wealthy businessman or influencer. In his own words, Bishop Whitehead is the GOAT when it comes to faith and ministry. Behind the rags to riches story he would have his followers believe is a skilled con man with a dark past. A past that includes using love to steal what police believed was millions of dollars, landing him in federal prison. But the bishop didn't leave prison a reformed man. His cons are still going on today, including on the most vulnerable of his congregation.
Confrontation during a Sunday sermon in Brooklyn landed two people behind bars, including a bishop who argues he was protecting his family.
This is the story of the scandalous life of the Brooklyn bishop, Lamor Whitehead. Before we begin, a quick note about the sponsor of this video, Care Of. Care Of is a subscription service that ships high-quality, personalized vitamins, supplements, and powders to your door every month. Care Of products are made from good-for-you, clean ingredients that are backed by the latest science and research so you can feel good about what you're putting in your body. Care Of's packs are made from a plant-based film that makes them compostable. If you have trouble deciding what vitamins you need or get overwhelmed by the process, Care Of's quiz takes all the guesswork out of building your routine. The easy quiz asks you questions about your diet, lifestyle, and health goals. Take Care Of's quiz and see what vitamins and supplements they recommend for you. Since taking the products Care Of sent me, including their electrolytes, B vitamins, and probiotic blend, I've appreciated more sustained energy levels and felt good knowing I'm using quality ingredients that have been ethically harvested and third-party tested. Click on the link below and use my code NOTTHEGOODGIRL for 50% off your first order with Care Of. Thank you to Care Of for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate the support. Lamor Whitehead was born in 1978 to a loving mother and father. But tragedy struck Lamor's life when he was only 6 weeks old, when his father was killed in a violent police altercation during a routine traffic stop. After that, Lamor and his siblings were raised by their mother. Despite the adversity, Lamor excelled at school and was a gifted athlete. When he graduated high school, he was offered scholarships to Shaw University, Farmingdale University, and Eastern New Mexico University. Eventually, Eastern New Mexico won out and Lamor enrolled on accounting and videography courses. After returning to New York, Lamor opened his own business as a mortgage broker. It was around this time he claimed he felt an awakening to his true purpose. That purpose was ministry, and he enrolled in further studies at the New York Theological Seminary. He completed a certificate in ministry and human services from the Theological Institution of Rising Hope, Inc., an accredited institution. After finishing his studies, he became a licensed New York State chaplain and a certified marriage and funeral officiant. So far, Lamor's story sounds like that of an intelligent man who felt called to serve a higher purpose. He had overcome the trials of his childhood and the challenges of the community where he was raised, and he wanted to inspire those who were struggling and show them a path to redemption through his God. But behind the facade, Lamor was using his talents for something much more sinister. In 2005, a woman in the New York County of Suffolk reported that her name had been fraudulently used to buy a motorcycle. It only took a couple of days for police to spot the motorcycle, and when they pulled it over, the driver identified himself as Lamor Whitehead. When investigators looked a little closer at Lamor and the apparent identity theft of the woman, they were able to connect the events to a string of other similar cases. Starting in 2004, officers in the same New York County of Suffolk had received complaints from multiple residents who claimed their identities had been stolen. All of the reports had one thing in common. The stolen identities had been used to secure financing for the purchase of vehicles, many of them Range Rovers and motorbikes. As the number of victims began to grow, the police department determined there was more than one person involved. So they established a theft investigation unit in the hopes of tracking down the perpetrators. While it wasn't always the same person who used the stolen identity, the investigation revealed that one lead person was behind the scheme, Lamor Whitehead. This is how the scheme went down. During the years the identity theft was taking place, Lamor was dating a woman who worked at a Long Island car dealership. Part of her job was running credit reports on customers who needed financing in order to buy a vehicle. To do so, she had access to almost all of the customers' personal information, including their social security numbers, bank accounts, credit history, and home addresses. Lamor's girlfriend kept the login details for her work computer sitting on her desk at home. And while showering her with compliments, gifts, and nice dinners, Lamor was secretly using her login info to access the customer's personal information and take out loans and lines of credit in their names. Lamor used the loans to buy nice cars and motorbikes, as well as to deck himself out in designer threads and jewelry. Overnight, Lamor had gone from a humble, Brooklyn-born and raised chaplain to a high roller who splurged on gifts and gadgets. He put his wealth down to his success as a mortgage broker, but identity theft wasn't the only scam Lamor was running. He was still working as a mortgage broker when he realized that not only did he have access to easy targets through his girlfriend, he was sitting on a goldmine of personal information himself. His job meant that he had access to the same information about each of his clients as well. He knew exactly what they were worth, and he knew exactly how much more they could borrow. Armed with this knowledge, Lamor reached out to one of the clients he previously helped secure a mortgage for and made him a proposal, telling him, quote, "You give me $200,000 and I will give you back $225,000 in 30 days. It sounded like easy money, and the client had already been impressed by Lamor when they worked on the mortgage deal. He trusted him. So the client agreed to the arrangement and took out a $200,000 loan against the home he had just purchased. He didn't tell his family about the arrangement as he wanted to surprise them with a special gift when the $25,000 came through. It will come as no surprise that 30 days came and went without the original loan or the agreed interest being paid. One day in 2006, 26-year-old Lamor was driving a stolen Land Rover down Riverside Drive in Manhattan when police lights appeared in his rearview mirror. After pulling over, he was quickly surrounded by officers, many who made up the theft investigation unit established 1 year prior, and he was arrested on multiple charges of identity theft. Suffolk Detective Sergeant Stephen Jensen described Lamor's outfit at the time as a pimp-style red and white mink coat. After the arrest, police searched Lamor's $500,000 home. Officers found multiple laptops, cell phones, a stolen weapon, and a bulletproof vest, all of which they believed were tools Lamor used to carry out his crimes. He was subsequently charged with illegal possession of a firearm. But the identity theft and firearms charges were merely a speed bump on Lamor's road to riches. Despite the indictment, Lamor was released on $90,000 bail and set free to do as he pleased. And it pleased him to keep on scheming. That was until 2008 when he was finally taken into custody to stand trial. By then, he had been charged with 10 counts of identity fraud relating to more than $500,000 worth of loans. Ultimately, Lamor was convicted on 17 counts of identity theft and sentenced to 10 to 30 years in prison. As other victims came forward, the prosecutor in the case later stated they believed Lamor's fraud could total more than $2 million. But after spending less than 6 years behind bars and being described as an ideal inmate, Lamor Whitehead was released from prison in 2013, and the bishop was just getting started. I have a calling, and I had to do what I had to do. As soon as I came home, it was on. These were the words of the bishop who was newly released from prison and promising redemption. Only weeks after leaving prison, Lamor set up his own church called the Leaders of Tomorrow Ministries. His congregation started with 43 worshipers who came to his home to hear his inspiring sermons about rising up from where you came from and achieving financial success through God's power. Lamor's form of preaching has been referred to as the prosperity gospel, which emphasizes the material benefits one can achieve through a relationship with God. Whereas other forms of Christianity preach humility and giving what you have to help others, Lamor preached about proudly demonstrating your affluence as a means to attract others to God. In this one aspect, Lamor practiced what he preached. He would stand at the front of his congregation wearing tailored designer suits with chains of gold and diamonds hanging from his neck. He had a garage full of various high-powered luxury and sports cars. So where did the money come from? Lamor got it exactly where any self-respecting designer-wearing prophet would get it: his congregation. Well, some of it. At the end of each sermon, Lamor would hold up a stack of empty envelopes and invite his followers to bid on an envelope to the value they wanted to sow. He told them that the more they sowed, the more they would reap in return. Whether it was $50, $500, or $5,000, there seemed to be no shortage of people willing to donate to his fund. But even if every one of the 43 members in his church gave him an envelope full of cash, his clothing and lifestyle far exceeded the amount he was being given. One Gucci or Louis Vuitton suit with matching shoes can easily cost $10,000, and that doesn't account for the jewelry or the cars. So where did he earn the rest of the cash to fund his lifestyle? In early 2020, 56-year-old Pauline Anderson had the misfortune to cross paths with Bishop Lamor Whitehead. When she attended one of Lamor's sermons, she saw a well-dressed, wealthy pastor tell the congregation how they could and should get rich through God and him. 4 months after joining the church, Pauline underwent a major surgery and received a get-well-soon phone call from the pastor. Just a few months later, Pauline received another call from the man, and this time he wanted to talk about money. Pauline had always wanted to buy herself a home for her and her family, but her credit score had taken some hits over the years, and she was turned down by every lender she approached. Despite having a deposit saved, she was never able to secure a loan. Enter her savior, Lamor Whitehead. Lamor told her about his experience with mortgage broking and offered her a solution to her credit problem. In exchange for her deposit, he would buy a home in her name through his company, Lamor Whitehead, Inc. Lamor assured Pauline that her deposit would cover the house and any repairs it needed, and would also leave a little bit left over, which he would return to her with some interest. Pauline had no job after having surgery, and the deposit was everything she had to her name, including her retirement fund. Although Lamor had helped her son buy a home, she was still cautious of doing business with the bishop. To put her worries to rest, Lamor offered her a $100 monthly stipend, which he would pay until she moved into her new home. That promise did the trick, and on the 30th of November 2020, Pauline wrote a check to Lamor's business for $90,000. For 6 months, Pauline never received a single $100 monthly stipend and heard nothing about her new home despite constantly contacting Lamor for an update. Every time she did manage to get through to him, he would tell her he was too busy with his campaign running for Brooklyn Borough President. By mid-2021, Pauline suspected that there was never going to be any house. But she knew for sure this was the case when her son received an interesting email from Lamor. Pauline had been introduced to Lamor by her son Rashid. Rashid had supported his mom in investing in Lamor's company, but when he realized Pauline was being scammed, he was the one who attempted to convince Lamor to give the money back. Rashid repeatedly texted and emailed Lamor until one day he got a reply, but it wasn't the reply he expected. Lamor had accidentally sent an email regarding a down payment on a $4.5 million home in Saddle River to Rashid. The email outlined some details about the down payment on the home. The amount discussed would have been more than enough to repay his mother's investment. But when he told Lamor about the email and demanded that he return Pauline's money, he received a text from Lamor that said, quote, "I'm in awe of how the devil is using you. However, I knew it was coming. Now beware of the hand of judgment will hit your life and everything that's connected to you. And for the record, anything that was given to me is a donation unless it's attached to a contract. I was making investments. That's what I do." In 2021, a federal lawsuit was filed against Lamor Whitehead for his part in fleecing Pauline of her life savings. But it wasn't only Pauline that he had taken advantage of. The lawsuit also indicted Lamor on charges of using force to try and get a businessman to pay him $5,000. Lamor also attempted to get the same businessman to lend him $500,000 and give him a stake in high-end real estate transactions. When Lamor was asked for a statement about the lawsuit, he claimed that Pauline and Rashid were only going after him because of his celebrity status, saying, quote, "Everybody that tried to sue me because of my celebrity status is just going to keep going in and trying to do what they do." Lamor reiterated that he invested her money as agreed and that there was never an agreement to buy her a home. But we aren't at the strangest part of the story yet. Call it karma, divine intervention, or just bad luck. But Pauline's lawsuit may never have made it into headlines if it wasn't for the day that Bishop Whitehead was robbed while in the middle of preaching a sermon. Lamor's history of shady dealings and the true source of his abundant wealth might never have been known if it hadn't been for the events of July 24th, 2022. On that day, Lamor rolled up to his service in a Rolls-Royce, one of his favorite vehicles. He stood in front of the congregation wearing a maroon velvet robe with gold cuffs, designer loafers, rings on most of his fingers, and a thick gold chain around his neck. His sermon was being live-streamed, and he opened with the line, quote, "How many of you have lost your faith because you saw somebody else die?" Only moments later, the live stream showed 3 people dressed in black and holding weapons entering the church and demanding everyone hand over their valuables. The group moved through the congregation and removed jewelry from Lamor's wife, who was sitting in the front row holding their young child. Another person held their weapon to Lamor's head while they pulled each ring from every little finger and then took the diamond chain around his neck. The thieves left just as quickly as they came. Lamor claims that they got away with more than $1 million worth of jewelry, including a Cuban chain-link chain valued at $399,000 and a Rolex watch worth $75,000.
Bishop was robbed at gunpoint in the middle of his Sunday sermon today, and it was all caught on camera. The service was being live streamed this morning when he says 3 to 4 men walked in with guns. He spoke at length with CBS 2's Lisa Rosner about why he believes he was targeted and his message for the suspects.
5 to 10 minutes into preaching Sunday morning on Remsen Avenue in Canarsie, Bishop Lamor Whitehead saw the door in the back of the room kick open.
How many of you have lost your faith because you saw somebody else die what you about to go through? Yo, all right. I seen 3 to 4 men come in. I said, all right. It's pretty much stating that I'm not going to do anything, right? Because I know y'all coming for me. Y'all coming straight to me. I don't want my parishioners hurt, right? I got women and children there. As I got down, one went to my wife and took all her jewelry and had the gun in front of my 8-month-old baby's face. Took off my bishop's ring, my wedding band, and took off my bishop's chain, and then I had chains underneath my robe. He started tapping my neck to see if anything else. So that means they knew. They watched and they knew that I have other jewelry.
The church's live stream shows the gun being held on the pastor.
They had the guns on my deacons that was at the door.
Whitehead says what you don't see on camera are around 100 congregants who were in the room. Men, women, and children dropped to the floor in silence.
My church is traumatized. The women and children are still crying. Still crying. Babies are still crying.
Police say the men took off in a white Mercedes. Whitehead says cops have a license plate and witnesses saw the men change clothes outside.
These men, they need to turn themselves in. I forgive you, and I'm praying for you. You know, and I hope that God deliver you from the mindset of who you are.
The video of the robbery quickly went viral online and brought a whole new level of attention to the crooked bishop. Many people claimed that the theft was a setup by Lamor for media attention, or an insurance scam he ran to get a cash payout. The idea that Lamor was running another scheme was amplified when Lamor repeatedly reenacted the robbery during his live-streamed sermons for weeks after the event. He warned that other pastors were in danger and that they should always be armed when doing the Lord's work. Lamor told his followers and those watching online, quote, "The devil didn't want me back in this pulpit. God said you can't take his life. You can touch his material things, but you can't touch his soul. I'm a miracle. I'm not supposed to be here today. Everybody wants to talk about what the tabloids are talking about and forget about the miracle." End quote. The rumors of a setup or an insurance scheme fell apart once officials confirmed the robbery was legit. Ultimately, 2 men were arrested and charged. At the time of this recording, the third suspect is still at large. After being vindicated of the robbery, Lamor filed 2 $20 million lawsuits against critics on social media who had previously claimed he was involved in the robbery. He later filed an additional suit, this time for $50 million against a radio DJ for similar comments. But the unintended consequence of that viral video was the spotlight that was put on the self-proclaimed bling bishop. Even with the charges against the robbers filed, no one could understand how a supposed man of God could be so self-assured in his displays of wealth when the people he was preaching to were from struggling neighborhoods. Lamor fills his Instagram with shots of his tailored designer suits, his cars, and jewelry collection, which is far removed from his disadvantaged parishioners. Lamor remained in the spotlight after another sermon went off script in September 2022. While Lamor was at the pulpit, 2 women entered the church in the middle of his sermon. They were in the back, but Lamor called them out for interrupting, and one of the women began yelling back and walking towards the front of the church. Lamor can be seen in the live stream of the service grabbing the woman by the back of her head and pushing her off camera while he yelled, "Grab her, grab her." The police were called, and when they arrived, they handcuffed Lamor in front of the congregation. He was told he would be charged with assault. However, after being taken to the police station, it was the woman who faced arrest. The woman, Tarsha Howard, was later charged with trespassing and disrupting a religious service. She claimed that she was there to research a book she was writing about the role of the church in the Black community when Lamor called her a wannabe blogger who just wanted to bring him down. With the woman's arrest, Lamor was vindicated once again, and just like every time prior, he used the attention to further paint himself as the victim, not the villain in his life story. He told the media, quote, "They lock me up in front of my children, in front of my wife, in front of my church. They publicly embarrassed me and then dropped all the charges after 2 hours and apologized to me. All I want to do is preach the word of God, and I end up in prison," he said. "They treated me like a criminal. They had me in a cell with someone with felony charges and let me out. It's not going to stop here. If I was a rabbi, if I was a Catholic priest, they would have never done this." end quote.
Confrontation during a Sunday sermon in Brooklyn landed two people behind bars, including a bishop who argues he was protecting his family.
CBS 2's Jenna D'Angelo spoke with both people involved and has the video from Canarsie.
We're going to pause right here.
During a live stream Sunday service at Leaders of Tomorrow International Ministries, Bishop Lamor Whitehead appears to get disrupted.
You want to come preach? You want to come preach? You want to come preach? Come on up here. Come on up here.
The bishop says it all started when two women came into the church mid-sermon.
One of my ministers told them that you cannot record. You can't record. And they began to make a scene.
Police say when a woman was asked to stop recording and leave, she began to antagonize the bishop and approach him on stage.
They take pictures and they want to be on social media. Take the pictures. Take the pictures.
As she walks past Bishop Whitehead, he appears to grab her from behind and they move off camera.
I've seen her walk in front of me, going at my wife and my daughter, and I grabbed her.
He says he was worried about his family and thinking back to the moment in July when he was robbed at gunpoint during a sermon streamed live online.
That's the only thing that I can remember. This lady had a bag under her arm and she was going after my wife.
The woman in the video, 47-year-old Tarsha Howard, was arrested and charged with trespass and disrupting a religious service. She showed us her injury and made a brief statement.
I am telling you right now that I did not charge after his wife. It's on video and everyone can see that I was the one that was assaulted. And after this statement, he will hear from my attorney.
The bishop was also taken into custody, but shortly after released, now criticizing the NYPD's handling of the incident.
I was treated like a criminal, so I went from the pulpit to the cell for no reason. The New York Police Department failed me and failed my church.
The video and subsequent media coverage of Lamor reignited the question, where did he get all the money in the first place? When reporters picked up the story after the viral video of the robbery and the potential assault charges, they attempted to get a statement from Lamor. They tracked him down to a 9,000 square foot mansion in New Jersey, complete with 6 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, plenty of room for his wife and 3 kids. But when they showed up, they found an eviction notice taped to the front door. It appeared that Lamor had defaulted on his mortgage as well as his car payments, and he had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of court judgments against him with no sign of the lawsuits ending. Remember the client who loaned Lamor $200,000, which he had borrowed against his own home? He filed a lawsuit against Lamor to get his money back. A court judgment ordered Lamor to repay the man a total of $261,000. There was also a lawsuit filed against him from the developers of a $1.6 million house he had defaulted on in New Jersey. It turns out Lamor had used his powers of persuasion to convince the developers that they should issue him a short-term loan of $126,000, and he would pay them back with a business check for $164,000. But the check bounced, and their efforts to collect the original loan amount were met with radio silence. So the developers filed a lawsuit in an effort to recoup some of the debt from Lamor. In that judgment, the developers were awarded $335,000. Then, in 2019, Lamor stopped making payments on his Mercedes-Benz and Range Rover. The company filed a lawsuit that ended with a $68,000 judgment against Lamor. And if that wasn't enough, in 2021, Lamor unsuccessfully ran for Brooklyn Borough President. He came last in the race with just 4,000 votes. But one of the staffers who worked for him on his campaign claimed that he had loaned $56,000 of his own money to Lamor, which has never been repaid. That staffer has since filed a lawsuit seeking repayment of the money. At the time of this recording, all the amounts I just read that were ordered by a judge against Lamor remain outstanding. As for Lamor's narrative on his history, he has never really addressed the charges or allegations or lawsuits against him except through his lawyer, who just repeats that Lamor will be vigorously defending the allegations and that Lamor feels he is being targeted and turned into a villain from a victim. But if you read Lamor's bio on his church website, you'll hear an entirely different version of events than those corroborated by court documents. Lamor claims that the initial arrest for fraud was illegal. It wasn't. He claims that he was released from prison after 6 years because his conviction was overturned. It wasn't. And that the source of his income is real estate investing and pastoring. That remains questionable. Lamor also claims to have close relationships with prominent businessmen, lawyers, politicians, and judges whom he claims seek out his advice as well as his endorsement during their election processes. He also considers the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, a personal friend. Interestingly, the mayor has distanced himself from Lamor after being told about Lamor's checkered past, and when questioned by the media, called Lamor a previous mentee of his. In December of 2022, Lamor was released on a $500,000 bond while he awaits trial for the federal fraud charges brought against him. At the time of this recording, he cannot travel out of the tri-state area, but he does continue to preach, mainly virtually from the comfort of his mansion. He still has his designer suits and limited jewelry collection to keep him company, for now. His court date has been set for April 11th of 2023. There is one thing that upsets Lamor, though. He claims that he should have received more media coverage for the robbery, stating, quote, "I represent that with Jesus, you can go through the storm. I think I should get the front page. You don't think I should get it? I think I was the face of the year." End quote. This has been the story of the scandalous Brooklyn bishop and conman, Lamor Whitehead. If you are a fan of learning about scams, cults, and cautionary tales, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll be notified when a new documentary comes out. My name is Josie, and thank you so much for watching.